I don't fish at night anymore. Not after what happened by the river. If you've ever been alone near moving water after midnight, you know how loud silence can feel. Every ripple sounds intentional. Every shift in current feels like something deciding where to move next. That night, I wasn't scared of animals. I wasn't scared of the dark. I was scared because something in the water knew my name. And the worst part, no one else was supposed to know I was there. I grew up in Tennessee. Rivers were normal to me. Weekend fishing trips, folding chairs, cheap lanterns, thermos coffee. It was routine, familiar, safe. But there's a difference between fishing with people and fishing alone. Alone changes things. You hear more. You notice more. You start questioning normal sounds. This happened 2 years ago at a river bend outside town. The second story happened months later at a different river entirely. Different locations, same feeling. And after both nights, I stopped going near water after dark. Here's what happened the first time. It was early April, still cold enough that most people stayed home after sunset. I drove out past the last gas station on Route 12, down a narrow gravel access road that leads to a quiet stretch of the Cumberland River. No houses nearby, no docks except one old wooden platform, half rotted near the bank. I liked that spot because nobody else did. I parked facing the tree line, killed the headlights, and let my eyes adjust. The river moved steady and wide under a cloud-covered sky. No moon, just dark water and colder air. I set up quickly, folding chair, rod holder pushed into the mud, small lantern beside my tackle box. The only sound was current sliding past rocks. I cast my line out about 20 yards and settled back into the chair. For the first 15 minutes, everything felt normal, calm, quiet. Then I heard it. Marcus! Clear, not shouted, not whispered, just spoken. I sat up right instantly. There was no echo, no distortion. It sounded like someone standing 10 feet to my left. I grabbed my flashlight and scanned the bank. Nothing. Tree trunks, reeds, mud. I walked toward the tree line behind me. "Hello?" I called out. No answer, no footsteps, no movement. I told myself it was imagination. When you sit alone long enough, your brain plays tricks. I went back to the chair. 2 minutes passed, maybe less. Then, Marcus. This time it came from the direction of the water, closer. My stomach tightened. I stood slowly and walked toward the edge of the bank. The lantern light barely reached the surface, so I switched on the flashlight and swept the beam across the river. Just moving current, dark brown water reflecting faint starlight. There are houses across the river, but they're far, and sound doesn't carry clean like that over water. It warps, it stretches. This didn't stretch. It was controlled, direct. I checked my phone out of instinct. No missed calls, no notifications, no signal. Nobody knew I was there. I hadn't told anyone I was going out. I stood there longer than I should have, shining the beam across the surface. Then I noticed something else. My fishing line wasn't drifting naturally with the current. It was pulled slightly to the side, not bending hard, just held, like something under the surface was maintaining tension. I stepped closer to the rod, and that's when I heard it again. But this time, it wasn't my name. It was a low voice right beneath the dock, and it sounded like it was trying to speak.
I told myself it was current distortion. Wood creaks, water echoes, old docks shift at night. There are rational explanations for almost anything if you're calm enough to look for them. The problem was, I wasn't calm anymore. I crouched near the edge of the dock and picked up my fishing rod slowly. The line was still tight, not jerking, not fighting, just steady resistance, like something was holding it in place. I reeled in half a turn. The tension stayed the same. Another half turn, still the same. No splash, no thrashing, no sudden movement, just pressure. I leaned forward and aimed my flashlight directly at the spot where the line disappeared into the water. The beam cut through murky brown. And that's when I noticed something that didn't sit right. The water surface wasn't reacting to the line at all. Normally, if something holds tension underwater, you see movement above, ripples, small circles spreading outward. There was nothing. The surface looked undisturbed, but the line remained tight. My breathing started getting shallow. I gave the rod a firmer tug. Whatever was on the other end pulled back instantly. Not aggressively, not violently, just enough to match my force exactly. That wasn't how fish behave. Fish panic. They dart, they twist. This felt controlled, measured. Then I heard it again. Not my name this time. A low, broken sound, like someone trying to speak underwater, right beneath the dock. I froze. The sound wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic. It was subtle, wet, muffled, and too close. The wood beneath my boots vibrated slightly, just a faint tremor, like something had shifted under the planks. I stepped back immediately. The fishing rod slipped from my grip and clattered against the boards. It dropped into the river with a soft splash. I didn't try to grab it. I just stared at the dark surface where it disappeared. For 3 full seconds, nothing happened. Then the water bulged upward slightly. Not a splash, not a head breaking through, just a slow, unnatural rise, like something large had moved directly beneath the surface. And then it stopped. The river returned to its steady current. My heart was pounding now, loud enough that I could hear it in my ears. I backed away from the dock slowly, one step at a time. That's when I heard the voice again, clear, right below where I had been standing. Marcus. Not angry, not loud, just patient, like it knew I wasn't going anywhere. And that was the moment I realized something worse than fear. Whatever was in that water hadn't just heard me earlier. It had been waiting. I should have run to my truck right then. That would have been the normal reaction. But something about the way it said my name didn't feel aggressive. It felt certain. That's what kept me there. I told myself there had to be a person in the water. Maybe someone messing with me. Maybe some drunk idiot who thought it would be funny. That explanation made more sense than anything else. So I stepped forward again. Slowly, carefully.
The dock creaked under my weight as I leaned down and looked between the wooden slats. The lantern behind me barely reached the edge, so I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut straight down into the water. At first, all I saw was murk, brown current sliding past the support beams. Then my eyes adjusted. There was a shape, about 6 feet below the surface. Vertical, still, not floating sideways like a body would, not tangled in debris. Standing. My throat went dry. It was human height, broad shoulders, head slightly tilted upward. The water distorted the details, but the outline was unmistakable. It wasn't drifting with the current. It wasn't swaying. It was motionless, as if the river didn't affect it at all. I told myself it was a trick of light, a log caught upright against the dock supports. But logs don't have shoulders, and they don't hold position against that current so strong. My hand started shaking. The beam of light flickered across the shape's upper half. Then it moved. Not fast, not sudden, slow. The head shifted slightly to one side, like it was adjusting its angle, looking at me. I stumbled back, nearly losing my balance. My phone slipped from my hand, hit the dock, and skidded toward the edge. I grabbed it just before it dropped. When I looked back down, the shape was closer. Not dramatically closer, just enough that I could tell it had changed position. Still upright, still facing me. And then, one arm lifted, slowly, from its side. The movement was deliberate, controlled. It raised its hand and extended one finger, pointing, up, directly at me. My entire body locked. I couldn't breathe for a second. It didn't rush the surface. It didn't lunge. It didn't splash. It just stood there, pointing. The current continued moving around it, but the shape remained steady, anchored, intentional. And then the voice came again. Not loud, not distorted, clear as if someone stood beside me. Come closer. That was when something inside me finally snapped into survival mode. This wasn't a prank. No diver could hold position like that in a current. No person could speak clearly from underwater. And no one should know my name. I backed away from the dock without breaking eye contact with the water, step by step. The shape didn't follow. It didn't disappear either. It just remained there, watching, waiting. And the worst part wasn't that it was in the river. It was that it hadn't tried to pull me in. It was trying to get me to choose to go.
I didn't run. Not at first. I kept backing up slowly, like sudden movement might trigger something. The shape stayed beneath the dock, still upright, still pointed upward, waiting. When I reached the mud bank, I turned and walked fast toward my truck. Gravel crunched too loud under my boots. Every step felt exposed. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see it climbing out. I didn't want to see the water breaking. I reached the driver's door, fumbled my keys, and got inside, locked it immediately, started the engine. The headlights cut through the trees and lit up the access road. For a second, I just sat there, breathing, telling myself it wasn't real, telling myself exhaustion can cause things, isolation can cause things. But as I shifted into reverse, the headlights angled slightly toward the riverbank, and I saw something that made my stomach drop. There were wet footprints in the mud, leading away from the dock, toward where I had been standing. They weren't there earlier. I would have noticed. They were deep, fresh, glossy in the headlights.
barefoot, human. They stopped about 10 feet from my folding chair, then turned and went back toward the water. Slowly, one step at a time. I scanned the tree line with my headlights. Nothing. No movement. No person running. No splashing sound. Just river current. I reversed all the way up the gravel path and didn't stop until I hit the main road. I didn't tell anyone. What would I even say? That something stood upright under the river and spoke my name? That it asked me to come closer? That it left footprints and then erased itself? Nobody would believe that. I didn't even believe it the next morning. I went back during daylight 2 days later, just to prove to myself it was imagination. The dock was there. The mud was smooth. No footprints, no disturbances. But my fishing rod was gone. The holder was still stuck in the ground, empty. And the line I'd lost, it wasn't caught in rocks. It wasn't caught on debris. It had been cut, clean, about 2 feet above where it would have entered the water, like something didn't want it attached anymore. I haven't gone night fishing since. Not at rivers, not at lakes, not anywhere water moves in the dark, because the part that stays with me isn't the shape, it's not the voice, it's this. Whatever was under that dock didn't try to drag me in. It gave me a choice, and I still don't know what would have happened if I stepped forward. The first time it happened, I told myself it was stress. The second time, I realized it wasn't following me. It was waiting at rivers. Different state, different shoreline, different night, same voice. If you've ever stood near water after midnight, you know how it pulls sound toward it. Conversations drift, footsteps blur, your own breathing sounds louder. But this wasn't distortion, it wasn't imagination, because this time I wasn't alone, and the voice didn't just say my name, it said something else. 8 months after the dock incident, I told myself I was over it. You can rationalize anything with enough daylight. I moved to Kentucky for work that summer. New town, new job, different routine. I avoided rivers at night completely, until my coworker, Aaron, invited me out. It was a Friday. He had a small aluminum boat and liked night fishing on the Green River, said catfish bite better after midnight. I almost said no, but turning down every river invitation forever felt irrational, so I went. We launched around 10:30 p.m. from a public access ramp about 20 minutes outside town. It was warmer than the first incident. Late August humidity, crickets loud in the tree line, the river wide and calm under a thin moon. There were other trucks in the lot when we arrived. That made me feel better. Normal. Safe. We motored about half a mile downstream and killed the engine near a bend where the water deepened. Aaron anchored us in place. The boat rocked gently. I kept telling myself this was different. Different river. Different circumstances. I wasn't alone. That mattered. We talked for a while. Normal conversation. Work complaints. Weekend plans. Sports. Nothing strange. Around midnight, the other boats in the distance started heading back toward the ramp. Their engine noise faded one by one until it was just us and the river. Water has a way of swallowing sound once everything else disappears.
It doesn't feel silent. It feels occupied. Aaron leaned back in his seat, staring at his rod tip. "You ever fish alone?" he asked casually. The question made my chest tighten slightly. "Used to," I said. "Not anymore." "Why?" I hesitated, then shrugged it off. Just got bored of it. He nodded and went quiet. About 10 minutes later, I heard it. Faint. So faint I almost missed it. "Marcus." It blended into the current. I froze. I didn't move my head, didn't react. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe the river just shaped a random sound into something familiar. Then it came again, clearer. "Marcus." Not from behind, not from the shoreline, from below, directly under the boat. I gripped the edge of my seat. Aaron didn't react. He didn't flinch. He didn't look at me, which meant he hadn't heard it. I swallowed and stared at the water between us. The moon reflected faint silver across the surface. There was no disturbance, no bubbles, no splashing. "Did you hear that?" I asked carefully. "Hear what?" "Thought someone called something." Aaron shook his head. "Only thing I hear is your line tapping." I forced a small laugh. "Yeah, probably nothing." I leaned slightly over the edge of the boat and peered into the water. The river was darker here than Tennessee had been. Deeper, slower. I couldn't see more than a few inches below the surface. That's when I noticed something subtle. The boat wasn't drifting naturally with the current. The anchor rope angled slightly downward, tighter than it should have been, like something beneath was pulling against it. Not enough to jerk us, just enough to hold steady tension. I watched it for a full minute. The rope remained tight. Then, the voice came again, louder this time, clear enough that I felt it vibrate faintly through the aluminum floor. "Marcus." Aaron looked up suddenly. "You feel that?" he asked. My heart skipped. "Feel what?" "The boat just shifted." It hadn't. Not from wind, not from current. It felt like something had brushed the underside, slowly, deliberately. Aaron stood and grabbed a flashlight from the storage compartment. He aimed it over the side and swept the beam across the water. Nothing. Just dark movement. "Probably a big cat," he said. "They bump boats sometimes." Maybe. That explanation made sense. Except catfish don't say names. I leaned back into my seat and stared at the opposite shoreline. Trees formed a black wall against the sky. I didn't want to look down again, but I did. The water surface near the bow bulged slightly, just enough to distort the moon reflection. Aaron didn't see it. His back was turned. And then the voice came one more time. But this time it wasn't just my name. It said something else. Soft, measured. "Still fishing?" My blood ran cold. That wasn't distortion. That wasn't current. That was speech. And it wasn't coming from the shore. It was directly beneath us. Aaron turned back toward me slowly. "You okay?" he asked. I realized my face must have changed. Before I could answer, the anchor rope jerked once, not violently, just enough to make the boat rotate slightly. And then the rope went completely slack, as if something had let go. The boat began drifting freely,
but the engine was off and the current hadn't changed, which meant something had been holding us in place and had just decided to stop.
I told myself I wasn't going back. But 3 nights later, I was standing at the edge of that same river again. I hadn't planned to return. I'd actually driven in the opposite direction after work. But at some point, without thinking, I turned the wheel. It felt automatic, like muscle memory, or like something had called me. The parking lot was empty again. No cars, no lights, no sound except the low, steady current of the river sliding past the bank. I didn't bring fishing gear this time. I brought my phone, a flashlight, and the small handgun I legally kept in my glove compartment. I don't even know why I grabbed it. Maybe because part of me already knew this wasn't going to be normal. The air felt heavier than before, humid, thick, like the night was pressing down on my shoulders. I walked straight to the same spot, the same muddy edge, the same stretch of black water. And for a few seconds, nothing happened. I almost laughed at myself. Maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe exhaustion and darkness had twisted my senses. Maybe grief and loneliness had filled in the blanks. Then, the river moved. Not a ripple, not a fish breaking the surface. The entire section of water in front of me shifted outward, like something large was displacing it from underneath. And then, Daniel. Clear, right in front of me, my name again. This time there was no mistaking it. It wasn't wind, it wasn't echo, it wasn't imagination. It was a voice coming from the water. I didn't run. I don't know why I didn't run. Instead, I stepped closer. "Who's there?" I called out. The water responded. "Daniel, come closer." It was wrong. The tone was almost perfect, human, familiar, but the pacing was off, the pauses too long, the syllables slightly stretched, like someone imitating speech after hearing it only once. My flashlight beam shook as I aimed it at the river's surface. For a moment, I only saw reflected light. Then, something pale drifted upward. At first, I thought it was a plastic bag. Then it rotated, and I saw a face. It wasn't floating like a body. It was upright, just beneath the surface, eyes open, skin pale and swollen. And it looked exactly like me. Same jawline, same scar above the eyebrow, same beard stubble. The eyes blinked, underwater. Its lips moved. The voice came again, but this time the mouth matched it. "Why did you leave me?" The beam of my flashlight flickered. The thing tilted its head in a way I've never been able to do, too far, too flexible. The water around it didn't ripple naturally. It pulled inward, as if gravity centered on that face. I stumbled back. "No," I whispered. The face smiled, but the smile stretched wider than mine ever could. Then its hand broke the surface. The fingers were long, too long, skin stretched thin, webbing faintly visible between them. It grabbed the muddy bank and began pulling itself up. The sound of suction and wet earth tearing filled the air. I drew the gun without thinking. "Stop!" I shouted. It paused. Its eyes never left mine.
And then it spoke in my voice, perfectly now. "If you leave again, I will come to you." The river behind it started moving, not just one shape, multiple. Dozens of pale faces rising just beneath the surface, some distorted, some half-formed, all watching, all smiling.
And then I understood. It wasn't calling me to drown, it was trying to replace me. The thing climbing out wasn't trying to drag me in, it was trying to take my place. The gun shook in my hand. I fired. The shot exploded through the quiet night. The bullet hit its forehead. Water erupted, but not like blood, like ink. Black liquid poured from the wound, dissolving into the river. The thing didn't fall. It twitched. Then it laughed, not from its mouth, from the river. Every face beneath the surface opened their mouths at once, and the sound, my laugh, echoed across the water. I fired again and again. The flashlight dropped from my hand, spinning across the ground. Darkness swallowed everything except the faint moonlight reflecting on water. When the gun clicked empty, the shoreline was still. The bank was undisturbed. No handprints, no bodies, no faces, just the river flowing normally, like nothing had happened. My ears rang, my chest burned. I stood there shaking, staring at the water. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. I nearly dropped it, pulling it out. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. There was silence for 3 seconds. Then, my voice, clear, calm, speaking from the other end. Why did you leave me there? The call ended. Behind me, from the darkness of the parking lot, footsteps, slow, wet, moving toward me. And from the river, a whisper right at my back. Daniel. I didn't turn around, because deep down, I already knew. One of them had made it out.